I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor at Gold Derby, here with Constellation DP Markus Förderer, ASC. Marcus, the visuals in this show are so breathtaking and complex, particularly the first two episodes which you shot. Firstly, what was the most challenging part or aspect of filming the show on that really impressive International Space Station set?
Thanks so much, and thanks for having me. I think like reading the scripts early on, I was really focusing on how we shoot the zero gravity scenes on the ISS. I think that was some of the most challenging sequences because it's quite complex. There's like a fire and deep press, and we watched many movies and other references, and I always felt like traditionally when you watch like movies or shows showing space, they have this perfect floating choreographed camera, and I just never felt like that's the way we want to do it. And I was really inspired by how real astronauts film themselves because they document their own experiments, for example, but they also film themselves in their private time. And we had an astronaut consultant, Scott Kelly. He was super helpful. Like he showed me some of the videos he took in his like spare time. Like he would chase other astronauts with his iPhone. And I was really fascinated by that aesthetic, trying to capture the story in a way that it feels like our camera operators are part of the crew and just documenting what happens, like to Numi's character, for example. So that was quite technical. We had to deal with like wire rigs and different rigs to make the actors float. But many times we used like very low tech techniques and mix it up. And the camera operators did a great job creating the sensation for zero gravity by just the way we floated the camera.
Yeah, I noticed that, and I also noticed that obviously there's a lot of visual effects in this show, particularly in the pilot in episode 2, and so there must be so much to take into account. Not only the cramped space, trying to make sure that everything is rigged up properly physically, but then also being very conscious of what's going to be put in the shot in post-production. And so does that just mean that you and the visual effects team, particularly, Doug Lama, need to be very much in sync to understand how each sequence is going to pan out?
Yeah, definitely. We closely collaborated with between the director Michelle, Doug Lamour and his team, and the art department. We constantly mixed up techniques. Like people are surprised, I think, when they see behind the scenes how much we actually built. Like our amazing art department was like Andy Nicholson, the production designer, spearheading this. We built a full-size replica of the ISS, like several modules. Like you can't assemble it at once. It's too big to fit in with the largest, one of the largest sound stages in Europe. But we built full-scale modules, even for the exterior, like the spacewalk. Traditionally, when you see an astronaut in full spacesuit in wider shots, traditionally visual effects will make this a full CG shot. But we really captured this for real. We had fantastic spacesuits. Like there's an expert who designed our spacesuits in detail. So we had like a completely blacked out stage and had certain modules, and I was pushing to let's use real visors because the real visors on a spacesuit have like triple layer glass. When you traditionally watch like CG shots, you just see one layer of reflection. The real deal has 3 layers for redundancy. And because like Constellation plays with like different realities, so to say, I was try to embrace wherever we can the sensation of like double reflections to give a hint for other realities. So the visual effects did a fantastic job like doing set extensions, but we always tried whenever there's an actor involved having a real physical set so you feel the real reflections and ground it as much as we can.
You see, because that just completely blows my mind. Obviously, we have seen plenty of TV shows and particularly movies like Gravity, for example, Apollo 13 back in the day, whatever it may be, Ad Astra, where people are in space or they're in the confines of some kind of spacecraft like the ISS. I just expected most of this because of budget and because it's on TV that it would just be all CGI and have a great day. That's not the case here. There's so much in camera that is happening. I want to pinpoint one scene in particular where one of the astronauts is very badly injured. He's being trying to be saved, and we start seeing blood, kind of pooling in the air, or yeah, in the air, I guess, in zero G. I know that a lot of that was visual effects, but talk me through shooting a sequence like that
Yeah.
when there's so much going on camera.
Yeah. It's like really like a magician's trick. Like I even when I was a child, I was really fascinated with magic and even did my own magic tricks. So I'm always trying to see can we incorporate some of those techniques in filmmaking because filmmaking itself, right? It's an illusion or whatever. It only counts what's in the frame, right? Nobody
Yeah.
knows how it's done. So we used of course, sometimes it's a wire rig to float the actors, but then the interaction is so important. Like we knew we cannot float real blood. We had blood samples. That was always, I think it's so important for the visual effects team to have lighting references, so we could float little fake droplets, like or hold them on a stick after every take in front of the lens, so they would see how it reacts to the lighting. Because all the lighting is like interactive. We had it connected to a lighting dimmer board to create like lighting effects because the ISS is like malfunctioning, so there's like flickering and all kinds of objects that flow through zero G. They would like after every take move through the shot to get a sense. Like it would be too time consuming to float them, let's say, on wires. But this way we have a perfect lighting reference. And then what's so crucial is like the interaction. There's a scene, for example, where one of the astronauts gets a droplet of blood on her cheek and she wipes it off. So this we had all prepared with like real blood on her hand and to feel that physicality that as she touches it, then visual effects reveals that already pre-planted makeup effect, so to say, and that hopefully sells the effect. But it's also important not to take away from the performance, right? Like there's always a danger when you add visual effects elements that it could become overwhelming, so there's blood droplets. So I always try to push, let's keep them slightly out of focus. We focus on our character's eyes. So you feel there's blood in the air, but you don't want to start counting individual droplets, so to say. So I think this was quite fascinating process to make it feel as nonchalant as possible, like following the action, whatever happens, without like highlighting too much, what was added in post.
Yeah, again, I find that all really just completely mind-blowing that you're able to achieve stuff like that these days. Other than the space set scenes, there's also a lot of complicated camera and lighting work that you did on the external snowstorm location set in Sweden. That to me looks just as difficult because you're out in the elements. I'm just wondering if it was as difficult as it looks.
Yes, yeah, that was a big challenge. Like the Michelle McLaren, our director for the first two episodes, she was always pushing, let's go for real to that location. So we have the scope of a real frozen lake and forest and snow. And I knew in the script it's mostly night, especially in episode 1 and 2. And we filmed so high up north that at that time of the year the sun never comes above the horizon. So I knew we would have very long pitch black nights. And for a couple of hours we get a nice blue magic hour, so to say. That's great, but it's very low light level. And I knew we had to somehow stretch these shootable hours because we were working with children and complex action scenes. So I thought for a long time, like I wanted to avoid this traditional condors, like using a big lighting crane in the far distance to bring hard backlight, because in that snow landscape, you would immediately feel the source where it comes from, and it would have felt like a stadium light or something.
Yeah.
And I was really inspired by when we scouted for the first time. We shot the Sweden scenes in northern Finland, like very close to the border of Sweden. It's pretty much identical landscape. Um, when we scouted it and I saw the Northern Lights for the first time, I was really fascinated by that effect it had on me and my eyes and how you perceive that. And I thought, how can we capture this on film, so to say? And so we came up with a lighting rig that's, I think it's quite unique. It's like a one tower light, which we put behind the cabin. We could extend on a scissor lift. And there's like very strong LED beams. They shoot out in every direction. above the frame line. So they were like high up, and they would actually light up the atmosphere and snow in the air. We also blew up artificial snow with our effects team. So they were like for hundreds of feet, we created this very soft, gentle glow from the top. So it's like a non-sourcey light. And then we actually added, because it's LEDs, color controllable LEDs, we created subtle color animations in like green, cyan, to give the sensation of the northern lights being present. And it was quite effective. So you hopefully can tell where the light is coming from, and this way we could, as the real light level drops and it would become pitch black night, we could slowly increase the output of that of those film lights.
See, because I just watching it, I had no idea that it was even done outside. I
Mhm.
just felt like, how on earth did they control the environment in such a way to make this feel so immersive? I just wonder, over your career to date, have you, I mean, how do you prepare for a challenge like this one? This one seems quite difficult. When looking back at your credits, you've got some great sci-fi experience, a little bit of action, some great drama. You know exactly what you're doing. But when you started this project, was there any apprehension in your own ability to be able to pull this off? Because it's a lot.
I mean, yeah, I was used from past projects to shoot a lot on soundstage, where we have a lot of control about lighting and the elements, so to say. And then it's great. You can create like a kid in a sandbox. But what pushed me was really Michelle saying, "Let's go to the real places. Let's go to northern Finland, or let's go to Morocco for the landing site." So we shot in the desert under very harsh conditions. It's very hot, very remote. So I always try to keep things simple. Like filmmaking is such a complex operation, right? There's like hundreds of people involved. So I always try to find what is the most elegant way to solve this, so we can focus on what happens in front of the camera without bringing too much gear. So for Morocco, for example, like the landing site is in the end of episode 2, I believe.
Yeah.
We had like this new drone, like we used an FPV drone, which is like a race drone, to chase in between the real helicopter and these cars trying to find Numi's landing site. So we didn't bring any dollies or big cranes. We did everything we could with drones, and it was so effective. And we even, coming back to the zero gravity and how to shoot the zero gravity, I was so inspired, like I said, by the way astronauts film themselves when they're in zero gravity. They, even when they float, they sometimes film themselves with a phone. Then you would still feel a handheld shake. So what they do is they push off the phone so it floats perfectly, and then they just follow closely to observe to get the smoothest shot. And I thought, how can we do something like this? So because some of the sets are so tight, like there's like airlocks, and this set is not built to walk on, it's built to
Yeah.
fly through. So from my previous experience shooting FPV drones, like on Red Notice, we used like for the first time FPV drones in a movie. Um, so we actually brought FPV drones. These are like little race drones. They're meant to fly outdoors very fast. So we brought in an amazing team from Skynamic. They helped us. We rehearsed this for a while, and then they could film, like fly through our ISS set, like through airlocks, very slow, very precise, to create like POV shots or establishing shots to intercut with our with like Numi, for example, flying through the space station.
Unreal. It's just absolutely unreal. My final question is about your choice to use anamorphic lenses as opposed to the standard like spherical lenses that you would see in other productions. I don't really understand a lot of the differences. I can see they look different. So what is the thinking behind when you're making that choice as to what kind of lenses you want to use, and why did you choose anamorphic to be used on Constellation?
Yeah, it's we live in an interesting t time where most camera systems become so good, the quality is so good that it doesn't really matter anymore what camera you shoot on, as long as you know how to expose properly. So the lenses become more and more important. And I felt for Constellation, yes, we have this big opening in space, but I knew there's a lot of scenes coming on Earth, like very regular conversations on a kitchen table, for example. And we have to find a way to convey that sense that there's something out there, a mystery is out, something is not quite right? So to create this tension, it's in a way it's a thriller. And what anamorphic lenses do, or especially specifically the ones we picked, like Panavision T-series anamorphic, they have a very strong vertical stretch, like whatever's out of focus has like this tension. So even if you look into the actor's eyes and you focus on the performance in the face, most of the frame is actually slightly out of focus, and that has this stretch, which I think subconsciously creates this tension, and you feel something is going on. And like for me, I hope it works for audience too. Like for me, it feels like I want to know what's going on, and I get sucked in. It's like a interesting phenomenon. And for every project, I try to be open and find the right lens that adds to the feeling and the story. And one other lens I want to mention there's like special scenes, what we call the liminal space, when like worlds collide. For example, at the end of episode 1, Numi is approaching this cabin where things seems to be odd. And we try to shot test, how can we find something to help the audience understand this is not the cabin we were introduced to. Here's something strange going on. And I didn't want to purely rely on visual effects, but find something we can do optically. And so we found this lens that has no front element. Usually you need a front element to focus, but this is a very unique lens that can somehow focus without the front glass. It's like a Frankenstein lens, and it creates this very strong aberrations at the edges. And when you rack focus, it has the three-dimensional effect. And I think this was created quite an eerie atmosphere together with the lighting and Numi's performance to hopefully help the audience understand something is not quite right here.
See, that's what I love most about what DPs are able to achieve. Obviously, you're creating beautiful images, and a lot of us think the best cinematography is the most beautiful, but your choices of lenses, shots, whether or not something is going to be on a Steadicam or stationary and dolly and so on and so forth, are so critical to the story. And so I'm really glad that you said that, because the anamorphic stuff did make me feel uneasy. I was always kind of thinking, why is her face looks so much different because of the background? And yeah, I just think that's so interesting, Marcus. Thank you for that insight. And look, congratulations on some great work on episodes 1 and 2 and Constellation. And hopefully we'll catch up with you on your next project.
Thank you so much, Robert. Thanks for this.